Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. It has been 7 years since our youngest child left for college, marking the end of our parenting journey. For so long, our lives revolved around raising 3 wonderful children. Now that they've all grown up and become independent, I thought this would be the start of a new chapter for us. I hoped that we would finally have time to focus on ourselves, but it seemed that the only thing truly holding us together was raising our children. We had always emphasized values like honesty, hard work, and self-sufficiency. These principles shaped our children, and they learned to stand on their own. Each of them chose stable, practical careers and quickly found well-paying jobs. Their father had wisely ensured that they wouldn't be burdened with student loans through careful financial planning. For 35 years, our marriage remained strong, based on our shared goal of raising our kids. But now that this mission was accomplished, it felt like Samantha and I were slowly drifting apart. Over the past 2 decades, she had become deeply involved in her job, a role in which she not only excelled, but also loved. I never fully understood the nuances of her work, and didn't take much interest in it. She was comfortable at work, and that was enough for me. Our mortgage was fully paid off, and we had enough savings to comfortably support the 2 kids who were still in college. Around 25 years ago, I started a land surveying business with 2 childhood friends, Oliver and Jack Brown. The idea was mine, and they eagerly joined to help make it a reality. However, a few weeks ago, something happened that threw me off course. I usually got home from work before Samantha and spent a few minutes sorting through the mail. One particular day, a letter from the Department of Health caught my attention. It was addressed to Samantha Murphy. Curious, I set aside the rest of the mail on the dresser, but kept this letter with me as I went to the kitchen to start dinner. Samantha usually arrived home an hour after me, giving me plenty of time to prepare everything. That evening, I was making lasagna. When she walked in, she warmly greeted me with, "I'm home, Charlie," and seemed genuinely excited about dinner. She mentioned that she couldn't wait to have lasagna with a glass of red wine. She kicked off her shoes, walked into the kitchen, kissed me on the cheek, and sat down. The letter I had placed on the table was right in front of her. Picking it up, she frowned and asked, "What's this?" She held up the envelope as I placed the lasagna dish in front of her. "I was hoping you could tell me," I replied, taking my seat and pouring 2 glasses of inexpensive red wine, our usual choice for no special occasion. "It came in the mail today." Though I was ready to start eating, Samantha opened the letter first. As she read it, her face darkened, and she muttered a curse, something she rarely did. "Is something wrong?" I asked cautiously, sensing the tension in the air. "Someone used my name to get tested for an STD," she said angrily. "I've been ordered to take a test by the end of the week." I blinked, stunned by what she had just said. "Do you have any idea who might have done this?" I asked, genuinely puzzled. "Don't be ridiculous, Charlie." "Of course I don't," she snapped, clearly irritated. Trying to defuse the situation, I asked, "Well, if you had to guess, who would be the most likely culprit?" Her anger flared. "This is no joke, Charlie. I have no idea how to figure out who did this. There's no name, just a demand to take the test. It's absolutely absurd." Sensing her anxiety, I suggested, "Let me take a look at the letter. Maybe there's some kind of reference number or clue we can use to trace this." She handed me the letter, but her worry was evident. "I hate this situation. I don't like that this is happening, and I'm not thrilled about you getting involved in investigating it. It just feels wrong. But if you think it'll help, go ahead." "I'll look into it tonight," I reassured her. "I doubt I'll get very far, but at least I'll try. You can handle it tomorrow if needed." Still uneasy, she wasn't entirely convinced. Half-jokingly, I said, "Why didn't I get a letter too?" Samantha didn't appreciate the joke. "You're being a smartass, and I'm not in the mood." She pushed her plate away, having lost her appetite. I realized I needed help. Grabbing my phone, I decided to call Jack. His wife worked at a hospital, and I thought she might be able to provide some insight. "Jack, it's Charlie. I need a favor," I said when he picked up. "Sure, what's going on?" he replied. "Today, Samantha got a letter from the Department of Health. It was about an STD. I have a case number from the report. Is there any way for Sarah to track who submitted it? I know it's supposed to remain confidential, but something's not right here. If Sarah doesn't have access to that information, maybe one of her friends does. Send me everything you've got, and I'll take care of the next steps. It might take a day or two to get something substantial. It was easiest to send him the report via email. Fridays were usually reserved for our Chinese takeout night. I had everything ready, setting the table and brewing tea while Samantha went to pick up the food on her way home. She came in smiling and handed me a medical certificate from the clinic. "Do you know a guy named Kyle Tremblay?" I asked, watching her reaction closely. The question clearly unsettled her. "Yeah, of course. He's the guy I fired 5 years ago for harassment." "You remember? I told you all about it back then. I thought he'd left town for good," she said in an even voice, though I sensed something underneath. "Well, he's back. He's living nearby now. Have you seen him recently?" Annoyance flared in her eyes. "Enough, Charlie. No, I haven't seen him, and I haven't had any contact with him since. I've always been honest with you." "Right, now I remember," I replied, pretending to recall. "He kept pursuing you, so you filed a report and he got fired. He wasn't happy about it, was he?" "No, he wasn't," she admitted. "He threatened me when they escorted him out, swore he'd get revenge, but years have passed and I thought it was all behind us. I promise, Charlie, there was nothing between us." She sounded sincere, but still, something felt off. It was obvious the situation was weighing on Samantha. She wasn't herself. She'd become more distant, less vibrant. Something had changed. With that nagging feeling, I decided to head to Kyle's apartment, determined to stay calm and keep my emotions in check. I needed clarity, and I was going to get it. When I finally saw him, he looked slimmer than I remembered, even smaller. There was something about him that seemed even more unpleasant than before. "My name's Charlie Murphy. You know who I am?" I asked, fixing my gaze on him. He straightened slightly and met my eyes. "Yeah, I know who you are," he said, a little more relaxed than I expected. "I think I know why you're here. Want to come inside?" His calm response threw me off. His apartment looked like a secondhand store's clearance section, but surprisingly tidy. "Take a seat. Want a beer?" he offered. I reluctantly nodded. He handed me a bottle, and I took a sip, not really enjoying it. "So, how do you want to talk about this? I think you know most of the story, but I'm curious. Why did you mention my wife's name at the clinic? You didn't sleep with her, did you?" I asked, studying his face. He smirked slightly, taking a sip of his beer before responding. "No, I didn't. Believe me, I tried, but it didn't happen." "So why did you even bring her up?" I pressed. He leaned back, sighing. "Look, you know the story. I was angry at your wife back then. It wasn't about revenge or anything like that. I just couldn't control myself. I got an STD, had to go to the clinic, and when I was filling out the forms, I guess I couldn't hold back my feelings. I added her name to the list just for fun, nothing more." "That's all?" "Yes, really. I can't believe you two are still together. I thought you'd have sorted this out by now." "Sorted out what?" He finished the last sip of his beer and glanced at my empty glass. "Want another one?" I gave a slight nod, but politely declined. He took my glass, refilled his own, and turned back to me. "Mr. Murphy, I didn't just flirt with your wife, I blackmailed her. I'm not exactly charming or attractive enough to win over a woman like her purely on charm, so I needed some leverage. After some thought, I decided to intimidate her. I warned her that I'd expose her affairs if she didn't agree to meet me. But she wasn't scared, and before I could carry out my plan, she disappeared. I ended up in the hospital, and after I got out, I headed to Texas." "Wait, what?" I interrupted, completely bewildered. "Hold on, I'm totally lost. What were you expecting me to understand?" I blinked in surprise. "Wait, you didn't know your wife was cheating on you?" His confusion mirrored mine, but before I could respond, he added, "Yeah, I think I'll take that second beer after all." I spent another 2 hours with Kyle, and eventually, the whole story came out. My wife had been involved with 2 other men, Michael Lee and Alexander Smith, both mid-level employees at her company. They'd meet in a hotel room. As far as Kyle knew, The three of them never met all at once. He didn't know if these affairs were still going on. Kyle, on the other hand, had been attacked by two men after being laid off. They beat him so badly that he couldn't move for a while. He spent 2 days in the hospital, and after being discharged, he packed up and moved away. By that time, I owned half the business, and Oliver and Jack controlled the other 50%. I eventually sold them my share for a symbolic $1. In return, they agreed to pay me $5,000 a month as a consultant. All I had to do was create a cover for a blind manufacturing facility. It worked out well for them, and for me too. Meanwhile, Michael Lee and Alexander Smith continued working at the company. As my divorce proceeded, I also filed a lawsuit against the company. I left Samantha a signed document finalizing everything, emptied our accounts, cleared out the safe, and transferred everything to her name. 3 days later, I hit the road. Within a week, I bought an old trailer in a run-down mobile home park. Soon after, I bought a new car, got a fresh driver's license, and a new phone number. By the end of the month, I had a stable job. I even opened a new bank account. Life became pretty simple. No, I didn't buy a toaster. The checks from Oliver and Jack were deposited directly into my new account. I waited 2 months before reaching out to my lawyer. "Wilson, it's Charlie Murphy." "Charlie, good to hear from you," Wilson said. "You left behind quite the complicated situation, but things are settling down. How are you?" "Couldn't be better," I replied. "I've moved. I've got a trailer with air conditioning, a fridge full of beer, and a lot of books. Life is good." That last part even made me smile. "Well, looks like you've got it all figured out," Wilson said with a laugh of his own. "Let me tell you what happened. The beginning wasn't easy. As expected, Samantha hired a lawyer. She was ready to dispute everything, but since you sold her the house for $400,000 and only took $40,000 in cash, her lawyer advised her to accept the terms and move on. That was exactly what I was hoping for." "How much longer do I have to wait?" "I didn't know you were in such a hurry." "I'm not rushing. I just want to wrap everything up quickly." "All right, let me check. You'll officially be free in 20 days. Can you wait until then?" "I think I can. I'll send you my new contact details. Email, phone, and address. Do you need anything else?" "Actually, yes. There are a few documents that need your signature. The company wants a settlement agreement, but they require a notarized waiver. They're offering $500,000. Does that work for you?" "Are you serious? I wasn't expecting to get anything. I just wanted to make a bit of noise. I assume you'll get your cut?" "Oh, of course, Charlie. I'll take my 30% commission off the top." I was struck by the fact that Samantha didn't even try to find me. I also hadn't heard a word from the kids or any other relatives. On the other hand, I hadn't contacted them either. It was unclear whether they didn't care or if I'd managed to disappear pretty well. I figured none of them cared. Whatever Samantha had told them, she must have come up with some explanation. But that was something to worry about later. Life had been fairly calm for the past 2 months. The job required the whole crew, and we even had a police officer stationed at one end. It was tedious work, and I wasn't as focused as I should have been. The cars were coming from the east when a silver car stopped right in front of me. I gestured for the driver to keep moving, but instead, the window rolled down. "You're easy to find, Charlie," a voice shouted. "You really should have considered changing your name." My first thought was, why the hell is Michael Lee looking for me? This definitely wasn't good. I backed away from the car as soon as his right hand appeared with a terrible black revolver. Instinctively, I threw my traffic flag into his window and bolted toward the castor bean field on the other side of the road. The revolver let out a deafening sound. I didn't know where the first shot went, but when he got out of the car, his aim improved significantly. The second shot hit me in the back, but there was no pain as I expected, more like a burning sensation. The third shot missed. He was now on foot, chasing me and shooting, but his coordination was off. By the time I reached the thick brush, I saw him trying to reload when I looked back. What should I do now? The next shot didn't come from him. It was quieter, sharper. Lee dropped his weapon and grabbed his leg, collapsing to the ground. Officer Isabella Garcia, our stationed cop, had stepped in just in time. She kicked his revolver away and stood over him, talking into the radio on her shoulder. I figured I was safe now and slowly walked toward them. "You okay?" she asked, not taking her eyes off Lee. "I think so." "Not sure," I replied, still trying to process what had just happened. I stayed aside as she began reading him his rights. Lee wasn't listening to a word she said. It seemed her knee had hit him, and he was far more concerned with that. She kept speaking into her radio, and 5 minutes later, more police and an ambulance arrived. They had to make their way to where we were, but they got there fairly quickly. The paramedic looked at me and couldn't suppress a laugh. He pointed at Isabella, and soon we both got the details of the incident. Continuing to explain to Isabella and me, he added, "He's got about 6 pellets lodged in his hands and back." He quickly reassured us, saying there was no need to panic. All the pellets could be easily removed at the emergency room, and I would likely go home right after. It was just a minor outpatient procedure. "Can I just take him to the ER in my patrol car?" she asked, clearly impatient. "I really don't want us both crammed into the ambulance," she added. Soon, we found ourselves in her patrol car, properly introducing ourselves. It seemed she was running on an adrenaline rush after the incident, using our short trip as an opportunity to escape her duties. It felt like she was trying to avoid facing her superiors. "Are you okay? You look a bit tense," I noted, noticing her nervous glances in the rearview mirror. "I think I made a mistake," she admitted. "I shouldn't have shot that guy." "What other choice did you have? He was shooting at you," I pointed out. She sighed. "Maybe I could have resolved it without using force." "You've got to be kidding," I replied, but she just shrugged. A brief silence enveloped us, but it didn't last long. "By the way, that knee strike was really impressive," I said, trying to lighten the mood. She chuckled quietly. "Actually, it was a body strike, not a knee strike." "Oh," I said, and we both laughed as we neared the hospital. In the emergency room, the removal of 8 pellets from my back seemed to make the day for the medical staff. They traded jokes, each trying to outdo the other with humor. In the end, they even handed me a small trophy bag with the extracted pellets. Isabella stayed nearby, adding a couple of jokes herself. When the doctors finished their work, my boss came by to tell me I should take a week off to recover. At the same time, Isabella's boss called her, reprimanding her for leaving the scene of the incident. She was suspended until the investigation into the shooting was completed. "Hey, Murphy, what do you want to do this week?" Isabella asked with a playful smile. I smiled back at her. Noticing my concern, she offered to take me home. One thing led to another, and in the end, she stayed with me for 2 days. During that time, Michael Lee, a man I had met before, was furious with me. He had lost both his job and his wife, while Alexander Smith had disappeared without a trace. Details emerged when they interrogated Lee, but he never mentioned my wife. No one could explain how he found me. A year passed, and Isabella and I were living together in a cozy apartment. We hadn't gotten married, there was no pressure for that. We were content with what we had. Having gone through failed marriages, both Isabella and I were cautious when it came to serious relationships. She continued her work on patrol, and I remained a flag officer. We weren't looking for anything more. Our compatibility was evident, both in our relationship and in bed. What more could a man want? As Christmas approached, I realized it was time to reconnect with my children. So much time had passed, and they told me that after the divorce their mother had fallen into despair. One day she drank too much and drove home, but she never made it. A horrific car accident took her life. I didn't even have to take revenge on her. Fate had taken care of that for me. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel. Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. Abigail Miller sat at her desk with her sister Janice beside her, both eagerly anticipating an evening that promised to be unforgettable. Abigail had planned such a cunning prank that she was certain people would be talking about it for years to come. Janice, who had always appreciated well-executed practical jokes, had been invited specifically to witness the event. The clock read 8:30, and they knew that the live stream from Michael and Norma Garcia's house was about to start. Earlier that morning, Michael had dropped a cryptic hint during a phone conversation, telling Abigail that something spectacular was in store, and he promised to send a link to the show later. Michael was one of Peter's best friends, and every Monday their childhood group gathered for poker night. This core group, Michael, Peter, Benny, Scarrow, and Paul, had been inseparable since kindergarten, and they had all decided to settle in the same town. Most were already married and had children. Peter and Abigail had 2 kids, Jenny and Mark. Benny and his wife Angela didn't have children yet. Paul had recently become a father. His wife Wilma had given birth to their baby just 2 months ago. Michael and Norma had 2 sons, Ben and Max, who were already asleep upstairs by the time poker started. Every week, poker nights rotated between friends' houses, with the hostess playing the role of a gracious host, while the other wives stayed home with their children. However, on Thursdays, the wives had their own gatherings. Thanks to the long-standing friendship between their husbands, the wives had also become close friends. On Thursdays, they indulged in various hobbies, ranging from crafts to book clubs. That evening, Angela Scarrow sat alone with her tablet in hand, eagerly awaiting Michael's new prank. Having grown up with 4 brothers, she had loved practical jokes since childhood and hoped that this one would be filled with good-natured fun. At exactly 8:30, the broadcast from Michael and Norma's house was set to begin. Wilma Getchell, utterly exhausted, clicked on the link Michael had sent her. She was sitting at her kitchen table, with her laptop open beside her, and on the baby monitor screen, her son, Paul Jr., slept peacefully. The last 8 weeks had been tough for her. Wilma was almost sure she had postpartum depression. She hadn't been sleeping much, and when Paul was home, his help left much to be desired, leaving Wilma to handle everything on her own. She considered closing her laptop and going to bed, but her curiosity got the better of her. As 8:30 approached, the live stream from Michael and Norma's house was about to start. Meanwhile, Norma's parents, Betty and Albert Jones, had also received an invitation to watch the show. Michael had sent them the same link, knowing how much they adored him. Betty and Albert were thrilled that Michael had entered their daughter's life and brought stability to Norma's once chaotic existence. In her younger years, Norma had been wild and restless, always at the center of parties and rebellions, and her parents feared she would never settle down. But since meeting Michael 10 years ago, everything had changed. Now, as a mother of 2 and a devoted wife, Norma had become the woman her parents had always dreamed she'd be. That evening, as they prepared for the April Fool's joke, they eagerly awaited what Michael had up his sleeve this time. With growing anticipation, Albert opened 2 bottles of beer, handing one to Betty as she made some popcorn. Their son, Jerry, connected the broadcast to their large TV, and the family settled in front of the screen, ready for the show. Finally, the live stream began, and the participants' recordings were turned on, as Michael had requested, to capture the moment. His specific request for recording made them think the prank would be monumental. The live feed came to life, showing the usual jokes and conversations between the 4 poker players gathered at Michael's house. The poker table was ready, drinks were flowing, and the game was in full swing. At exactly 8:30, the screens of all the viewers lit up, showing Michael's living room, where the men were playing cards and laughing. About 10 minutes into the game, a voice from the kitchen interrupted, the voice of Norma, announcing that snacks and more beer would be ready soon. For some viewers, the screen split, showing both the living room and the kitchen. For others, the broadcast focused solely on the kitchen. There, Norma calmly poured chips into a bowl and filled 4 glasses with beer. Everything seemed normal until she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small packet. With skillful precision, Norma poured the packet's contents into one of the glasses. The substance dissolved instantly, and the foam on top concealed any trace of tampering. The viewers, now fully captivated by what was happening, began speculating about what was in the packet and who would drink from that glass. Albert, grinning, bet Betty that the unlucky recipient would be Paul. Meanwhile, Janice nudged Abigail, convinced that her husband Peter would be the one to take the fateful sip. The crowd was stunned when Michael Garcia appeared with a beer in his hand. This unexpected turn of events only added to the mystery of what was happening. Why did Michael and Norma give him the contents of the mysterious package? It was clear that the two were plotting something together. The explanation had to be much more complex. Perhaps the couple had set up cameras all over the house to record a prank. Then Michael sent a link, further intensifying the strange atmosphere. Something about the situation felt off. Soon, Michael's eyes began to feel heavy, his body relaxed, and his eyelids involuntarily started to droop. The audience was utterly confused. Could it be that the other participants were preparing to prank Michael himself? Maybe they were going to shave half his hair off. But that seemed unlikely. More likely, this was a prank within a prank. Perhaps Norma had accidentally given the beer to the wrong person, and Michael wasn't the intended recipient. The viewers couldn't tear their eyes away from the screens, mesmerized by what was unfolding. As Michael's head slowly drooped onto the card table, his grip loosened, and the cards slipped from his hands, leaving the audience breathless. The cards gently floated to the floor. Then, suddenly, a loud voice boomed through the speakers in every living room. "Finally! I've been waiting for this for a whole month. All right, folks, it's time to head to the bedroom. Time is running out." Abigail Miller turned to her sister Janice, exchanging a bewildered glance. Janice mirrored her confusion. Angela Scarrow's face tensed as she grabbed her phone, while Wilma Getchell was entirely focused on the baby monitor, barely noticing as little Paul Jr. stirred in his sleep. Betty and Albert felt uncomfortable but couldn't look away from the screen. Those with split-screen functionality could see Michael unconscious at the card table, while the second screen showed the bedroom. For those without that feature, only the bedroom scene was visible, and it was quite a sight. Without hesitation, Norma, Peter, Benny, and Paul began undressing. Paul collapsed onto the bed, leaving his legs dangling off the edge. Norma quickly climbed on top of him, and what happened next left the audience completely shocked. There was no hesitation or preparation. One moment, it was an ordinary card game, and the next, Norma was intimately involved with Paul. The transition was so seamless that it was hard to believe this was their first time. Amazingly, the timing was perfect. The poker game had ended, and the lovers didn't have much time. But the suddenness of it all left everyone in shock. Janice clung to her sister Allison, who was sobbing uncontrollably. None of them could find the words to describe what they were feeling. Abigail, dazed, tried to process what she had just seen. She had always thought her marriage was perfect, and now it felt like her world was falling apart. Janice, too devastated to speak, remained silent. Meanwhile, Angela Scarrow was beside herself with rage. She pulled out her phone and quickly dialed her older brother Jeff. When he answered, she wasted no time. "That idiot, my husband, is right now in bed with that tramp," she snapped sharply. Jeff's reaction was calm. It didn't surprise him. He and his brothers had never liked Benny Scarrow. Angela, the youngest in the family, had always been their little sister. Jeff, the eldest, along with Jason, James, and Jared, had always taken special care of her. Their father had died of cancer when Angela was just 8. His last request to his sons was to always take care of their mother and sister. Jeff had immediately dropped out of school and taken a job in construction to support the family. At 18, he became a carpenter's apprentice and sent home every penny. Jason followed in his footsteps, leaving school at 17 to help on the construction site. When James turned 17, he did the same. When it was Jared's turn, his older brothers insisted that he stay in school. Jared was the smartest of them, and they wanted him to earn a degree in engineering. After his graduation, they planned to open a contracting business together. By the time Angela married Benny, the brothers' construction and design firm was thriving. Jared was still living with their mother, while the others had married and moved out. The family remained close, but Benny, though tolerated for Angela's sake, had never won the approval of her brothers. Benny had a tendency to overindulge in alcohol, and during his drunken outbursts, he often taunted Angela, saying, "I spit on your brothers." Angela loved both Benny and her brothers deeply, and despite these hurtful words, she believed their marriage was strong. Of course, there were occasional tensions, but Angela didn't think anything could destroy them. It's remarkable how quickly love can become unrecognizable. Meanwhile, Jeff was on the phone with his brothers, unaware of the storm brewing in the Garcia household. Wilma Getchell was on the verge of tears. Weeks of relentless depression, exhaustion, and sharp hormonal swings had turned her into a shadow of her former self, drained and sleepless. She slowly approached her son, Paul Jr.'s room, picked him up in her arms, and silently carried him downstairs. Once they were down, she fastened him into the car seat and, without a word, headed to the car. In the living room, Betty and Albert, who had been watching TV, quietly turned it off. Their faces reflected a heavy sadness that needed no words. Albert got up from the couch, gently kissed Betty, and put on his coat before leaving the house. 20 minutes later, the chaos in the Garcia household had reached its peak. Norma had once again retreated into her usual cold and detached state, not even noticing that it was John, Michael's brother, who was standing by Benny's bedroom door, who was the first to notice. As Benny was processing what was happening, John entered the room, followed by a stern blonde woman who exuded an aura of professional authority. The noise in the room died down when she calmly said, "Could you stop?" Norma turned to her in confusion. "What's going on?" Her bewilderment was mirrored on Paul's face. "What the hell?" Paul began, but Peter, always quick to adapt, changed his reaction. "Who even is she?" The woman remained calm, taking 2 confident steps toward Norma. "Are you Norma Garcia?" she asked. Norma hesitated for a second, then nodded. The woman didn't flinch. "I'll take that as a yes. You have been officially served," she stated, quickly snapping a photo to document the moment. It was one of the strangest shots of her career. Without further explanation, the woman left the room. In the silence, John's commanding voice rang out, "I have power of attorney from my brother. Since you've stripped him of his legal rights, I'm here to act on his behalf. You need to leave his house, immediately." Norma opened her mouth to protest, but John's piercing glare silenced her. His voice was filled with contempt. "Especially you. You're just trash. My brother loved you, and this is how you repay him? Get out." At that moment, Benny realized this was his chance to escape. Frantically gathering his clothes, Benny dashed downstairs, hoping to finish dressing in the card room. But as soon as he entered, he was met by Jeff, Jason, James, and Jared. Benny froze in place. Jeff was the first to step forward, delivering a powerful punch straight to Benny's jaw. The blow instantly broke it. "That's for breaking your vows," Jeff growled. Benny collapsed to the floor in agony. Before he could react, Jason grabbed his hand and yanked off his wedding ring. Then, with a swift and precise motion, Jason broke Benny's finger. Through the haze of pain, Benny barely heard Jason's cold remark, "Maybe now you'll understand what loyalty means." Before he could process what was happening, Benny was dealt a brutal blow to the groin by James. James didn't hold back. The steel toe of his boot struck with such force that Benny immediately lost consciousness. He didn't hear James mutter, "Let this remind you to stay faithful." By the time Jared approached, Benny was already unconscious. "You always said you spit on us. Now we spit on you, Benny." Paul entered the room just as Jared was fastening his pants, trying to slip past the brothers unnoticed. He managed to sneak through, his eyes fixed on the floor, but he didn't see Wilma standing in the doorway. Fueled by adrenaline, rage, and hormones, Wilma gently set down the car seat and lunged at Paul. She became a whirlwind of fury, hitting, kicking, and yanking his hair. Her nails scratched his face with wild, desperate energy. Paul, stunned, could barely defend himself. After several minutes of Wilma's furious assault, Paul finally managed to break free and flee into the night. Moments later, Peter Miller came downstairs, completely unaware of the chaos that had just unfolded. Peter's brothers had witnessed Wilma's brutal attack on Paul and were now doing everything they could to help her calm down and pull herself together. Meanwhile, Peter, hoping to slip away unnoticed, was already at the door when his phone vibrated in his pocket. The name on the screen, Janice, his sister-in-law. Her voice sliced through the air, sharp and filled with hatred. "Don't you dare show up here tonight, you pitiful excuse for a man. You destroyed my sister. Her lawyer will be in touch with you soon, so get ready. Now disappear, and I hope you rot. Elsewhere, Norma was alone with John in a room that had become eerily quiet. To her, the brief affair with one of Michael's friends seemed like a deserved break from her role as the perfect wife. For 10 long years, she had been a loyal, devoted wife and mother. But lately, memories of her wilder days kept resurfacing, tempting and calling her back. She convinced herself that one harmless fling would help her feel like the devoted wife and mother she once was. Benny was an easy target for her plan. He had always wanted her, and she knew it well, just like she knew that almost all of Michael's friends felt the same way about her. The first time went smoothly, but instead of satisfaction, Norma felt she needed more. Her desire overpowered her reason, and before she knew it, she repeated the affair 3 more times, including today. After the last time, Michael started asking her uncomfortable and suspicious questions. That should have been her signal to stop, but the temptation was too strong. She couldn't resist the pull. Norma was jolted out of her thoughts by John's voice, breaking the silence. "Get out, you treacherous cheater. Michael's lawyer will be in touch with you." Stunned, Norma quickly dressed and threw her things into a suitcase. As she was leaving what had once been her home, she was shocked to see her father waiting for her at the door. Albert's gaze pierced her, full of contempt. "You had everything, and you threw it all away for a fling. Get in the car, fool." John, on the other hand, felt only pity for his brother Michael. "What a disgrace," he muttered under his breath. He glanced at the hidden camera in the corner of the bedroom, the very one he had helped Michael install. That camera had broadcast the entire humiliating scene for everyone to see. Michael believed this would make the upcoming divorce process a bit easier for everyone. The recording was just to expose Norma for what she was. Norma never suspected that things would spiral out of control this way. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel.